what do you recommend people who are new to industry? Do people look for a startup or like a small scale industries to join with, or like directly join a bigger company?
I had an excellent manager who explained something and they called it a career crawl chart. So you're always trying to maximize your outcome. Startups in small, medium, and large. There's some advantages to them.
So like what's biggest mistake you saw like people make during the interview?
They don't answer the questions correctly. You'll ask something and they won't talk about their win. Tell me what you've done. It's your opportunity to show the work. So you'll say something like,
so how do you see that? Like, is it good, or is it like, how do you see that trend of switching company every 2 years?
let's think about the opposite, staying in a company. If you're with a company for a long time and you're moving through the career path, you're achieving your steps, you're learning what you need to learn, then you could stay in that company. But as soon as you feel that...
Hi everyone, welcome to Deep Diving with Samyak Jain. Today we have Roman Mrozek with us. Currently he is working as a VP of Supply Chain at Frontrunner Bus, which is a minibus manufacturing company, and he has also worked in Wayfair as senior manager in partner operations team. And prior to that, he was working for a company which used to manufacture security threat for currencies for different countries all over the world. And before that, he was a senior manager at Motorola. So with lots of experience under his belt, he's here to share some insights with us today on how to progress in supply chain domain and how we can. So today we'll try to leverage and gain some insight from him. So thank you, Roman, for joining us in this podcast.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure to work with you, Samyak.
Can we start with like a brief introduction of how from being a cost accountant you came so far in your career to becoming a VP of supply chain? So how was your whole career journey?
Absolutely. I think that what it really started with was my first position in a manufacturing company. That was the only thing missing from my background that you didn't provide. So I'm originally from the Midwest and I worked in a factory, and that's where the cost accounting happened. So I was reviewing all of our jobs to see if they were profitable. And what ended up happening is I was pulled into projects, little things that the leadership couldn't handhold, and they trusted me to do it. So I started kind of working with different departments, different groups in the factory, trying to push initiatives forward. And then it developed my relationship with everybody. So I think that's critical there. So I was working with quality, I was working with production, scheduling, purchasing, and learning. And so I would almost say that's the critical part of your early career, is expanding yourself as rapidly as possible, to work with as many managers as possible, and then to always be open to gaining a project. You might be terrified that you don't know, but you put in the effort to learn, to develop. And I think that there's a iteration, right? You come up with a rough draft, and then you team-based work it. Go to a couple people, have them verify it, let them use their experience and knowledge to help you craft the ideal situation. And you have to consider your resources, you have to consider the timelines. So sometimes you may want to do something spectacular, but you got to pare it down so that you can get it initiated early. Or you can phase it out, small, medium, large, over time. So that first job really grounded me, and I was able to progress there.
Yeah.
I became in charge of all the purchasing. And then it's funny in the way that happened. As I was purchasing everything, any problems and issues would become my responsibility. So it was a growth in career that was thrust upon me. So if I was paying for the repair of machines, all of a sudden I was scheduling it. I was working with the companies. I was verifying that they did the work correctly. I was making sure that the work center leaders and operators were happy with. And now I learned that work center. I was purchasing the inspection equipment. So now I was working with the quality people. I was understanding what the products were, the different brands. And so in this small 100-person company, you had to become the subject matter expert for everything. We were doing health insurance. We were doing property and casualty insurance. And then you're trying to achieve your goal, right? You're trying to support materials on time, tooling on time, outside services. You're developing this portfolio from I'm just a purchasing person. So where I want to share with your audience is there's different levels of that. If you work in a very large company, you might be in a small column and you're just a transactional person looking at things, making sure they're right. But as you get to a smaller company, you'll wear more of the hats in the chain. You'll initiate the need. You'll review the different suppliers. You'll check the costs. And in terms of supply chain, you become all the links. So that's that career growth. You want to almost be wary that you're not like purchasing agent 1, 2, 3, because then you've lumped yourself in. You almost want to make sure that you get some experience in other departments. So
Okay.
when I had this background, it grew into general manager. So now that I owned all the purchasing, I got sales authority. I was assigned a customer. Now you have a different perspective. You're trying to solve the customer's problems. That grew into scheduling. They had a project for a new portfolio of equipment, and so you had to build out a 180 product portfolio. What came next? Then you were dealing with everyone on the floor because you needed to make sure that your production was going through. So you dealt with the different work center leaders. And
Interesting.
now what's interesting is you can't just one-sided work. My needs, my wants, my action. And now it
Correct.
becomes an interplay. What do you need to be successful? And this is where the leadership comes in. So you start in a selfish position. I have my deliverables, and now you're working in a general team, and you're a leader, and you have to do a lot of listening, and you have to do a lot of helping. So in this position, what I learned is to be that ear, to listen to everyone. And what would happen is they would bring the problems to you to resolve because you were willing to listen and help. An example of this was cleaning parts. It's really simple, but almost every company goes and buys an expensive piece of equipment for it. And it's time consuming, it's slow, it doesn't do a great job. And part of my purchasing was working with a material safety company. And I was just telling them this story. I was with them and I was talking about it, and they go, I have the exact perfect thing for you. And they showed me an air agitation table that was $5,000, and it did
Oh,
the work of probably 6 people safely, effectively. And the only problem with it is it would make a lot of noise because it was air assisted and had an air. So
yeah.
because I was so familiar with the McMaster catalog, which is your material catalog of everything, I knew that they had like mufflers, and we just attached a muffler to it. So I improved the design of the thing. And you're always trying to think, how can I help? What can I do? And you're trying to piece
Yeah.
together all of your experience. So I left that position and went to work for Motorola. And this was a corporate job. So a lot of my learnings were a great base, but moving into a corporate position, it's very different in that your authority dissipates. In my manufacturing company, I was probably third in charge, and everyone had to listen to me because it was either me or they were talking to leadership or
Yeah.
ownership, I should say. And in a corporate place, everyone is doing their own thing. And now you need to develop your communication skills. You have to understand how the different parts of the company work, the different goals. And it starts to become more difficult because in a private company, the leader designs the company completely. They own it end to end. They understand it. But in a corporate place, you're really dealing with a bunch of different leaders with a bunch of different goals. So how do you achieve all your priorities? How do you achieve all your KPIs? And what you have to do is you have to take bites out of the elephant. You have to pick your priorities and work on them. And you're being assigned some priorities as well. So you learn a different set of tasks. And I would say that what you're trying to do is you're trying to show your colors. And what I mean by that is you're on stage. People are watching you. And because of the positive attitude that you put into something, the good work that you provide, you become selected for different types of works and positions.
Correct.
I was selected for a rotational program. So I was able to work in third party. I was able to work in the distribution center, and I was able to work on the value stream all within 5 years. All of those experience you have to embrace. You have to put in the effort to learn, put in the effort to succeed, and that's that career building steps. So watch in my career that 15 years, 10 years of willing to do anything, to fail, to succeed, to develop your skills, and then move into a completely different industry, different role, different position, and start over. And you
Correct.
start really kind of putting a lot of experience into your portfolio that you could draw upon. Next, I moved into the role in New England, which was the currency security. And what that was is a geography change. When
Yeah.
you think about your career, you have to think about what you're getting out of it, thinking about your financial success, your career success, how you have your work-life balance. All of these things are interrelated, and it's really important to pay attention to. So I moved into this role, and it was an end-to-end supply chain role. I had the planning, scheduling, purchasing, then I worked with the production team, then I had shipping and receiving. I also dealt with customers in there, and it was a medium-sized company. So all of my experiences applied very well. Left that and joined Wayfair. I'd always wanted to join a technology company. How did I even end up there? All right. I looked at my experience, and you start looking at it and you go, you know what I was able to do? I was able to figure it out. You don't
Correct.
panic. You don't have the anxiety. You put the work in. You get the information. You start really understanding the business, and then you start working with people. And you have to ask them for help at the beginning. The first 6 months are difficult, but that's where all the learning really takes place. And then you start really being able to deliver and improve. And then then I joined Front of the Bus company as the VP of Supply Chain. My work there was to really set up the purchasing. There was no ERP system that was managing the materials. I created multiple sheets that were basically MRP systems. I had 3 sheets that were running close to over 1,000 parts, and it was able to create the function. Now, that's not something that I knew in the interim. I didn't know I was going to spend my time doing that, but it was critical to the success of the company. And we didn't run out of any of those parts that would impact production. So that goal succeeded. I think that's a good initial summary of my career path and how it went.
Thanks. Yeah, I
Sure.
think definitely it's very encouraging to know like how from like starting from a smaller company on like what's the difference between how to work in a small company to a mid company to a large company. You get it all the experience with you, so it helps you when you are right now as a VP. It helps you understand like all the perspective of how to handle the people and the business out there. So thank you so much for sharing that. So as I was listening, so you have worked in like as a small company and then moved to a corporate job after that. So what do you recommend people who are new to industry, like new to this supply chain industry? Should people look for a startup or like a small scale industries to join with, or like directly join a bigger company if they get an opportunity, like where there is more learning?
I had an excellent manager who explained something, and they called it a career crawl chart. Some people call it like a sand chart. So if you think about it, you have a beginning of your career, and you have to be realistic. You have an end to your career, and you have to plot that path through. And your axis on the Y, on the vertical, you can't just say that it's money, right? Or level. You have to think about it in terms of what you're learning, what you're doing, and how to path. So when you're looking at your career, and I'm just going to say step by step, look at it in the industries that you're interested in. You may not know earlier in your career what industry you want to work in, and then flip that axis and now move into what position, right? You'll learn these things by experimenting and trying, but what you're also trying to do is achieve the other goals. So for example, in my career, the geography move, I want to work in a great company. I want to work for a great manager. These are important things, but then where is it? And that will change your perspective. It'll change your opinion on the situation. So you're always trying to maximize your outcome in different corporate structures, right? Between startup, between small, medium, and large. There's some advantages to them and some disadvantages to them. So if a company is very mature, it doesn't move very fast. But a startup will, okay? And then conversely, there's some risk involved. In a startup, you may not have that job in 6 months because they run out of funding. But in a mature company, you could probably weather a few storms before they make any big moves. So it's based on your risk factor. My thought process is that what you really need to do is you need to look at yourself, look at your family situation, and then plan out your career. Look at that concept of a crawl chart for your career. Look at where you want to end up and think about the future. Your resume, okay? Don't think of it as a document that you hold in your hand that's a piece of paper. Think about it as something that shows where you were, what you've done, how you've succeeded. Show your best foot forward in that. Show what you're capable of in that document. Then when you're in a company, look at the things that you're doing. The ones that you're trying to avoid because they're hard. The ones that are difficult because they're challenging. Those are the ones that you should take notes on, KPIs and progress on, because if you win, it's going to be a great resume builder. I joke about that when you're handed an impossible project. And then if you fail or don't do as well as you want to, record that as well, because the next hiring manager is going to be interested in hearing those stories. They're going to want to see your thought process. The second, or actually I should say, the second of the 3 parts is your interview skills. Through my career, I love to interview, okay? You have to learn about that company, hit every single website, look at their website, memorize it, find all the reviews, read everything that you possibly can to prepare yourself for that interview. Then everybody has all these different guides, right? How to interview well and all the standard questions. But what you're really going to think about is someone's going to ask you, walk me through your resume. And they're asking you, show me your career crawl chart. Talk to me, what happened? Sometimes people have a story that will be, a family health consequence. I was out for 2 years. Well, why? I had to take care of a family member. Okay, thank you for explaining that to me. I don't have to hunt for that information. In an interview, you need to be able to skillfully deliver the path that you've taken. Why did you leave this job? Significant financial opportunity. I love that answer because you're realistic. You have to pay bills. You have to provide for your family. And I am more than 100% okay for somebody to spend some time at a company and just, hit a home run and find their next position. It's part of career growth. The third part is networking. It's something that I was probably the most weak at and still struggling with because I never saw the value in the beginning of my career. Now I realize that that is the most important thing.
Correct.
A very, very great example of networking was definitely at our time at Wayfair. We were impacted by layoffs at Wayfair, and the amount of support the Wayfair team provided, I've never seen something like this before. Every single leader, every single team member, every single associate reached out, banded together, tried to help, tried to connect to a level that I've never seen before. And seeing that, and again, only very recently in my career, had I developed that throughout my career, I think that would have been invaluable. That's going to open doors for you. That's going to get you into other companies.
So as you mentioned, like we need to understand how we think about, like we have to be open about our career journey in initial years of ours when we are new to this like job site. So like there's a trend right now and people try to switch companies every 2 years or so. So how do you see that? Like is it good or is it like how do you see that trend of switching company every 2 years?
Let's think about the opposite, staying in a company.
Yeah.
If you're with a company for a long time and you're moving through the career path, if you're achieving your steps, if you're learning what you need to learn, then you could stay in that company. But as soon as you feel that you're not progressing, I think that's the time to start looking. There's different levels of looking. There's light looking, medium looking, heavy looking.
Yeah.
And you can begin that process with a very low lift. Update your resume, look at some job posting sites, do a little bit of networking, and just see what comes out. Or if you're very frustrated, then you can ramp that up. With regards to moving a lot, I would say some managers are leery of that. However, my version of it is finding a great candidate is finding a great candidate. When somebody comes in, got a good resume that they've spent time working on their experience, they can do a very good phone interview where they're showing interest, motivation, intelligence, talent, skill. Then you bring them in, and it's at that point their job to lose. In my opinion, if you've been selected for a phone interview, you've already got a foot in the door. It's up to you to push it open with your phone interview. And the way that I would do that is to really be able to deliver what you've done, what you're capable of, what you want to do. Show that leader that you're a committed person. If you've been at a company for 2 years and you've really learned a lot and done a lot, that job hopping, it's not ideal, but I think that ship has sailed, and that's going to be a new trend going forward.
And yeah, because I think with the current market conditions and how it's going, people are trying to be in a company which is pretty safe in terms of not laying off. Because we had like yesterday, the news came that Meta is again going to lay off 5% of their staff this year, and all of them will be manager level. That will be so definitely. I think it's definitely ambition and aspiration is one thing, but also like how the career opportunity is going in that company matters a lot. So as you told, like you like interviewed many people, right? So like what's biggest mistake you saw like people make during the interview?
They don't answer the questions correctly. So you'll ask something and they won't talk about their wins. Tell me what you've done. It's your opportunity to show the work. So you'll say something like, you've been a, purchasing agent, and have you had any problems? No. And you sit there, you're like, you've never had a problem? A supplier didn't decommit on you? Yeah, they do. And you're like this. And I will admit, there's some people who have the skill to have this discussion over a beer. They will talk to you for 3 hours about work, but you bring them in, and they put a sport coat on, and all of a sudden the tension, the nerves come in. But that's your prep work. Remember I mentioned the resume. Resume is not just making the piece of paper, it's being able to speak to it. It's being able to talk about what you've done. And, usually an interview is an hour to 2 hours. It's not a really long time, especially when multiple people are asking, you're having different conversations. The amount that you have to deliver isn't significant. And a lot of the prep sheets will give you that information. But, the STAR format is key: situation, task, action, results. And if your job is very focused, then you should have a focused answer. I was not broad. I didn't do a lot. I did this, but, go through that, walk through that step. The next part is the challenges. How did you fail if you were a manager, right? Were you not able to train somebody? You tried 10 different things and you couldn't motivate them, or you couldn't get them to be skilled up enough. Working in a larger team environment, there was one engineer that you just couldn't get them to help you. Talk about it. It's okay. Yeah. I think there's some honesty that we want. We don't want the perfect corporate answer. What animal are you? I'm the eagle. low because I fly high. It's just not going to work. You got to be able to talk about that job, especially the one that you're just in or out. Like that one, you should be able to I should be able to close my eyes and have a complete picture of what your day was like, what your week was like, what your month was like, what your year was like. And then to me, honesty goes a long way. I know I interviewed somebody who came late, and I simply asked them, I go, is there any problem with you coming late to the interview? And they absolutely leaned into it. They were completely honest. And their answer was so accurate and honest that I ignored it as a flaw. I allowed them to continue in the process because normally you would just shut it
Yeah.
down and make it brief. But that's me as a manager. I have that
And
flexibility.
definitely, yeah. I'm able to relate. Like as I work with you, I'm able to understand like what you. So thanks for sharing. Definitely, like honesty is something that is very critical. But like for example, when questions are asked, like, why do you want to work in this company? And people are 90%. I'm sure like they are not honest with like why they want to work in this company.
I guess the way that you structure it is you would have to know that that's coming, right? Why are you interested in the company? How did you find the company? That gets asked every time. I ask that all the time too, because I'm really interested in the answer. You could say something, I'm interested in the industry, or, something in my family has been attributed to that. Like, me walking into the currency security job. Oh, I've always been interested in currency security. Maybe yes, maybe no. It's going to be a tough sell. But what I can say is I have run all of these departments. I have worked in all of these departments. I am familiar with the work, and I can work with this team to succeed. A product is a product, and I want a high quality one shipped on time. This is what I want, right? It's that ability to pivot into what is attributable. And I could have joked and be like, yeah, I love money. Haha, I like to make it. But that's not what you want from a seasoned person is jokes and humor at that time. But, look at the bus company, right? I have worked in companies that were small, and I like making them bigger. I like growing a business. So what we were able to succeed is to double the production of buses with roughly the same number of heads. And again, with material clarity, right? So we were better at getting the materials when we built twice as many buses. That's a huge win in a short time. It's not easy to do, especially without systems. You're doing it all in Excel. So you're looking at that. Where am I at? Where am I going? But don't be selfish. Do it with the company, with the team to get that mutual success.
So like now understanding, like as we talked about a couple of various aspects and what happens in the interview. So there is one last thing that happens at the end of interview is like, do you have any questions for us? And this is something which is very important, I believe, in the interview process. So is there any time, like, can you tell us some situation where like people give you very good questions and people where they were very generic, and like what are the difference, and how as a hiring person you think when people ask those types of questions?
Sure. So during an interview, you want to explain what's happening with the company, where we've been, where we're at, where we're going. I like to give that answer so that they have a perspective. I like to talk about the team composition, the skill, the morale, where they'd be in it so they could fit themselves. Then I talk about some of the ancillary teams, who you deliver to, who you work with. Then I like to walk through the resume backwards. Just walk me from, what'd you do in high school? What'd you do in college? Not looking for a lot. I just want to get a sense of the person and how they respond to these questions. And you have this conversation. And then what you do is you obviously move to this, do you have any questions at the end part? And I like to have an interview where I've basically done that. I've answered it all. And I don't want to hear that answer, okay? I want some gaps to be there. And it could be how much of the work is dropped into Excel, right? I have an ERP system, but at the end of the day, we all manage it in Excel. What's the level of that? Or even ask me that. How much Excel skills do I need to do, right? Is simple filtering and a little bit of pivots enough, or do I have to make advanced equations and multi-tab spreadsheets to manage? Then I would like to kind of understand, have them ask me about the morale of the team. Are they happy? Are they stressed? Are they frustrated? Then I would really want to know about what projects I'd be working, right? Not just the run rate work, but what other things that the company. So it's this, do you already see yourself in the company from the information that I've given you? What would I do on my first day? Where would I be in a month? What would I be learning, right? Remember I mentioned my 3 big sheets that were running the MRP at the bus company. In what order would I pick them up? Dump all of them on you, but I want that person already to be imagining themselves in that role and almost telling me what they think is good and telling me what they think is bad. Another example is usually you go on a plant tour and you're watching that person's reaction. Are they bored? Are they interested? Are they asking questions? What's that? How does this work? The other thing is, how are they interacting with people? Are they saying hello? Are they saying good morning? Are they trying to hide from them? You're getting a sense of how their interaction's going to go and what type of character they have. Final comment, companies are really starting to use personality profiles. There's a whole bunch of different ones, and some companies really believe strongly in them and others don't do them. So I think that's a question mark there, because do you answer them honestly? Do you answer them as how you work, or do you answer them as how you think they want you to answer? And all of those tests are designed to kind of pull that out and break that out. Who are you versus how you are at work? So
Correct.
that's a very big question mark. I've gone through the training, I've seen the tests. I am on the borderline. I can't tell if it's amazing or if it's a disaster.
Yeah. So I think definitely, like, so in my company, like at Boston Education I was working, they, like, we also do these type of tests every 3 or 4 years. You are compulsory to do, to see how you are in conscious, how you behave in unconscious, how you behave. And like for me, it was good. Like I was on the same zone on both the time. Like it was so there I came with a yellow color, which is like more like talking with people, more this networking kind of thing. I'm good. I like doing. So that came in my both conscious and unconscious side of me. So definitely I think.
So at my most recent company, strong believers in it. And the funny story was, I had kind of forgotten what my profile looked like, and I was hiring somebody for my team. So I crafted the profile not knowing the shape. And when my manager looked at it, he goes, "You know what you did, right?" And I go, "No, you picked yourself to to hire for the job." And
Yeah.
that's the bias, right? People
Yeah.
like people like themselves. You have to create some diversity, because there's going to be different people will help view things differently. They'll do the work differently, and you don't want everybody the same and run into some groupthink or something like that.
Yeah, definitely. And now, like while I was talking with you, I was remembering like the hiring managers and the perspective who have like worked in supply chain for like more than 20 years. Thank you so much for sharing all your insights.
Great, Samyak. It's been a pleasure, and I thank you and your audience.